Hey everyone, so let's look at the Stukent simulations that some of the students have done and try to figure out what are the things that worked and what are the things that did not work as intended. So just keep in mind some of the things that I told you uh, before we started the simulation. We learned about how generally the Google AdWords is structured in terms of that above all there is an account. Within an account there could be numerous campaigns. Within each campaign there would be different ad groups, and for each ad group you would generally create one ads, right? So you have one campaign, then you can have multiple ad groups within that campaign, and within each of those ad groups you generally will have one ad, because more than one ad cannot be shown for one ad group. And if you have multiple advertisements within one ad group, then Google will randomly select between the ads that you have and will display it. Now this is really good for A/B testing, because if you have two ads within an ad group and one ad is performing better than the other ad, then you know that this advertisement is working, and then maybe in the future you will use the ad that is working and not the ad that is not working, right? But if you have more than one ad, Google is randomly displaying those ads. Keep that in mind. So the different simulation rounds require you to create different campaigns, a limited number of ad groups within that campaign, and also specified number of ads. So for example, in the first round of simulation you were required to create one campaign and then 3 ad groups within that campaign, and each of those ad groups would contain one ad. Now similarly in round 2 you were supposed to add one campaign to the round 1 simulation that you already completed, so a combined total of 2 campaigns, and then you were again required to create 3 ad groups within the second campaign that you created for 3 separate products. The products that you were selling in the first round were Nikon, GoPro, and Panasonic, I believe. In the second round you were required to create a separate campaign and then also create 3 different ad groups for the 3 new products that you were going to select. So for each round there are different requirements, and make sure that you are following those requirements as well, because if you continue to follow the requirements, what is going to happen is that the number of ads that you are going to display is going to increase, and because you are spending that $5,000 now across multiple products advertisements, there is a higher chance that you will sell something, right? Because if you started out by creating one campaign and only one ad group and then only one ad in the first round, then your $5,000 budget is allocated to that one advertisement, and if that advertisement does not work, then all of your budget is not going to be completed. Versus if you followed all the requirements and then you at the end of the round 2 created 2 campaigns with 6 ad groups and then 6 advertisements, then that $5,000 is going to be allocated across the 6 different advertisements. Now there is a higher chance that you will be using up all of your budget, because now you have 6 ads that are in the market, compared to if you only did one ad for one ad group and one campaign, then you only have one ad. So there is very less chance that your ad will generate as much revenue as somebody else's ads, where they have created 6 advertisements and you are only working with that one advertisement. So that is another problem that I noticed as well. So please follow the requirements of the simulation to the letter, right? So let's just go over and take a look at some of the examples. So let's take a look at one of the students performance and how the ad groups performed for that particular student. So as we know that there was a requirement that we create 2 campaigns for round 2, and this is the results for the round 2, and the student has created 2 campaigns, and as we can see here, the campaigns have not done particularly well there, because there is no impression, there is nothing in the bag, because the first step in our objective in terms of creating advertisements is to get impressions, right? And as we said, you will only get impressions if your advertisements show up in number 1, number 2, or number 3 positions. If 3 advertisements show up and your advertisement is ranked 1, 2, or 3, then you will show up, which means you will get an impression. and once you get an impression, everything else follows. And as we talked about trying to rank higher, one of the things that you needed to do to rank higher is your bid amount. How much you bid for each of the keywords will have an impact, but even a bigger impact will be dependent upon the quality score of your advertisements, right? So when we talk about quality scores, there were a lot of factors that went into the quality scores in terms of the keywords that you are using, in terms of the advertisements, and with how many times you've used the keywords. Do you have your call to actions? All of those different things associated with the quality score of the keyword is necessary to be included into the advertisements. Now for this simulation, we don't have control over how our landing pages looks in many instances, but in this round we also do have control over how our landing page looks and what are the keywords that we are going to use in our landing page. So that's also going to have an impact in terms of your quality score for your advertisements. So let's take a look at this particular student and some of the things that he did well or she did well or did not do so well, which resulted in those impressions being very, very less. Now first of all, the budget is 5,000, right? And the student has allocated a budget of 4,000. Now I don't think this has a impact because the impression itself is 0, right? So the 3,000 budget was not spent at all. No impression means no clicks. No clicks means no budget requirement. So let's take a look at the first campaign that he ran. So in the first campaign, which is the practice campaign, in the first campaign he has only one ad group. Now he has only one ad group in that campaign, and that ad group itself is paused. And since the ad group itself is paused, that means this particular ad group is not running at all, which would make sense that there is no impression, right? Because the ad group is paused. So if we look at the campaign, overall there are 2 campaigns, but one of those campaign is actually not running because the ad group associated with that particular campaign is paused, right? So no impression, it makes sense. So let's just, for example's sake, even though this is paused, take a look at the ads that were created. And as you remember, for the first round you have to create 1 campaign and 3 ad groups with 3 ads, and then in the second simulation campaign round you have to create an additional campaign and then 3 ad groups. So by the end of the second round you should have 2 campaigns with 6 ad groups running with 6 ads associated with those 6 ad groups, right? So there is an ad group. Let's see if he has an advertisement for this. Okay, yes, he does have an advertisement that is associated with this particular ad group, but I see that this particular ad is for the Kent's Camera Castle and it's not for the product that he was advertising. So in the round 1, whether it was GoPro or Panasonic or Canon, our requirement was that you create an ad that is associated with that product, not the company itself, because consumers are not going to buy the company, consumers are going to buy the product. So you create advertisements for the product. So he did create this ad, but as you can see, it's also paused, right? And his default cost per click bid was 2.74, which I think is okay, right? But since this is not running, we'll not get into that a lot. So here, whenever we create an ad, the one very important thing is the keywords that are used in the ad, right? So for this advertisement is about Kent's Camera Castle. Let's see the keywords that he has used, and here we can see that the keywords that he has used is not Kent's Camera Castle at all. So here there is a big mistake, because your advertisements and your keywords have to match. So if you're advertising Canon products, then your keywords have to be Canon related keywords, or your keywords that are associated with the product itself. So keep that in mind, because here we can see that he is advertising a lot of 4K cameras, and he's also advertising Samsung Galaxy. So I'm not quite sure what the student is trying to do here, but as we talked about this in class many times, if you're advertising Samsung Galaxy phones, then your ad should be about Samsung Galaxy, and your keywords should be about Samsung Galaxy. Similarly, if you're advertising Canon cameras, then your ad should be about Canon cameras, and your keywords should be about Canon cameras. Again, another point that I also mentioned many times is the problem associated with selecting too few keywords, right? So as I said many times in class, and other students also who were present in class and who talked in the discussion forums, who did well, actually also told the other students that you need to select more keywords. And here we see that only 4 keywords have been selected. Now even if the 4 keywords were perfectly associated with the ad that this particular student had created, then in that case 4 keywords would not be enough. And also when we talk about keywords, we talked about fathead keywords and long tail keywords, right? So fathead keywords will generally generate more impressions because those are broad keywords like Nikon cameras, Canon cameras, 4K camera that we see here are all fathead keywords, and that will generate a lot of impressions because many people will be searching for those keywords. Now long tail keywords are very specific keywords. So Nikon D5300 24 megapixel camera is a very long keyword, right? So these long tail keywords will generate few impressions because not many people are searching for that specific product, so the impression will be low. Although the impression is low, the benefit of long tail keywords is that once your advertisement shows up based upon the keyword that the consumer has typed, if the consumer has typed the specific keyword, then the consumer is really interested in that product. So if I type on the Google search console Nikon D5300 24 megapixel camera and that advertisement shows up, then that advertisement is very relevant to me, and I will definitely click on that ad, right? So that would mean that although you will get less number of impressions for long tail keywords, your conversion rate might be higher because you are targeting very relevant consumers. So as I said, the problem with this is the keyword is not associated with the ads. There are not enough keywords here, and then the ad is not about the product at all. So, and again, this ad is paused completely, which means it's not running at all. So let's go back to the campaign and look at all the campaigns. We just went over the practice campaign. Let's look at the campaign 2. Now here we see that the ad group name the person has given is completely random, number 2 whatever 2. So but the good thing is all of these ad groups are active. So let's just go into and look at the ads. So there are 3 ad groups in this campaign, which is a requirement for the second round, and I see that the student has done that. Now there are 4 advertisements that are running, which is more than the required 3, but let's take a look. This is the campaign, this is the ad group, and we see that there are 3 ad groups. Let's look at the number 2 ad group for the students. So the number 2 ad is ad group. So here you can see the number 2 ad group, and the ad associated with the number 2 ad group is GoPro 7 Hero Black, right? So new high technology camera. So here we see the default cost per click is 1, the impressions are all of them are 0. So let's take a look at the keywords. So here we can see that the student has selected a little bit more keywords, but again he's selected kind of keywords that are very similar to each other, right? So GoPro 1, GoPro 2. So if somebody is typing GoPro, then these keywords will also be kind of relevant to the simulation, and somebody is typing GoPro 7, then that's also relevant. So here we see that there are a number of, so here we can see that the student has used 6 keywords. Now again, I would say that the 6 keywords are not enough, and also at the same time these are keywords that are very similar to each other, right? So try to broaden your the types of keywords that you are using. Now of course those keywords have to be relevant to the product that you are selling. So maybe sports camera, 4K cameras, action cameras, right? All broad keywords that you can use where you might be able to get more impression. Now again, you have to go back and do the keyword research a little bit more, spend a little bit more time on the 35 or 36 pages of keyword that this particular simulation provides, right? And try to get as many keywords as possible. So here we can see the suggested bid and cost per click bid. The cost per click bid is higher, but there is no impression, and sometimes that is the case. which given that this is a simulation, and even in real world, if you select keywords that are very similar, then your ad is going to show up for only these keywords. So you have to kind of branch out as well. So let's take a look at the other ad groups that the student has created, and he's created two. So the whatever campaign, right? So whatever campaign, let's look at the ad. It's the Panasonic GX85 digital camera for the Kent's Camera Castle Panasonic GX, which is the advertisement itself. That's okay. So let's look at the keyword. Again, only 4 keywords. So the student has only used 4 keywords, and those keywords are very similar to each other as well. So as I said, please expand the number of keywords that you are using whenever you are creating these advertisements. That's something that is not being done here. In terms of insight, the page quality associated with the landing page, which is something that was required for this particular round of simulation, which is round 2, according to the simulation, is not really good, which might mean that the keyword were not used properly, or the calls to action were not appropriate, or the unique value proposition were not displayed properly, right? So all of those things might create an association with page quality, and we can see here the advertisement itself is also not that really good, which I would say, like, because you have more spaces here, what you should be also providing is providing a lot of description, right? So you have one headline. You can be creative in terms of the headlines that you are using. You can be creative in terms of the display or description that you have. So provide some description, use call to actions in your descriptions as well, use call to actions in your header, use unique value propositions, or provide unique value propositions in your headers and in your description as well, because these are what entices the consumers to actually click on your advertisement, right? So I think that is another problem associated with this particular ad group. Now let's take a look at some other campaigns. So we went through number 2, whatever. Let's go back to whatever 2, and we see that for this particular ad group, the student has created 2 ads. And as we say, whenever you have an ad group, one ad group generally only needs 1 ad. If you create more than 1 ad, then Google is only going to display one of those 2 ads. Okay, so let's take a look at another student's performance, and here we can see that the student has also not performed really well. And I can see one of the reason is that there is only 1 campaign that is active instead of the 2 campaigns being active. One of the campaign has been paused, and I could figure this out without even looking at this, because the overall budget here is $7,000, which is not allowed. You only have $5,000, and if you did not pause this, then the simulation would not even start, right? So maybe that's why the student actually decided to pause this particular campaign, because the simulation did not run without this being paused. But the requirement of the assignment was for you to create 2 campaigns, and the student here for the round 2 has only created 1 campaign, which in itself is a problem. And this is even a bigger problem in the grand scheme of things, because if you think about it, we are having problems spending our budget. Now if we have more ads, there is a higher likelihood that we will be spending our budget, because if we create 10 ads versus if we create 2 ads, then there is a higher chance that those 10 ads will generate impressions, and we will be able to sell our products, compared to if you were only showing 2 ads, right? So you have to follow the requirements of the simulation properly, because there are other students who are following the requirements, who have 6 ads running, while you only have maybe 1 or 2 ads running. So in that case, you are never going to be able to catch up with the other competitors that are selling 6 products with 6 ads, while you are only selling 1 or 2 products with your 1 or 2 ad. So thereby, there itself, some students are not doing as well as the other students. Now, just keeping that aside, we look that here there are 2 campaigns, and the active one also has not generated any impressions. All of these are 0 simply because the ad itself is paused, right? So let's take a look at what is happening here. So the student has created 3 ad groups for that particular campaign, which is the requirement, right? So 3 ad groups for each campaign. So we can see the ad group kind of organizes the product that you are going to sell, but as I said, it would be easier if you named your ad groups associated with the ads, because here it says good for any sports. So you are going to sell sports camera, but this is a specific sport product that you are going to sell, right? So let's take a look at this particular campaign. It says high action shots that can be taken in any sports, and so Canon cameras. So I would assume that this particular ad group is for Canon cameras, right? So if you are selling Canon camera, then your advertisement has to be more specific to Canon cameras, because high action shot, somebody who is looking, and if you think about action, then that particular keyword might be more associated with action cameras like GoPro or the Sony FDR-X3000 or some other action cameras, and Canon may not necessarily be associated with the action cameras, right? So if somebody is typing the keyword, now let's take a look at the example. What are the words that are used here? Action shots, right? Canon cameras. So let's take a look at the keywords and whether or not the keywords are relevant to the ads. So here we can see Canon, best Canon DSLR camera, Canon TFI. So there are Canon cameras. So this particular ad group is definitely for Canon cameras, but the ad is not making that extremely clear. You are like, the student has used Canons, which are the keyword, a few times, but it's not been used in the header, right? And this is one of the most important part. If your keyword is not in the header, then like an ad that has the keyword in the header is more relevant to the consumer's keyword than an ad that does not have the keyword in the header. Now it's not a necessity, but if it were the case, then that would be better, right? So like somebody who's typing, let's say, action cameras, your ad might show up, but here, since you did not buy the keyword action, somebody who's typing action cameras is never going to see your ad, even though you have used the action shots keyword, right? So the keyword that you've emphasized on is action shots and then sports, but the keywords that you bought does not have action shots or keyword in it at all, which means if somebody is typing action shots and keyword, because you did not buy those keywords, your ad will not show up at all. Now the keyword that you did buy, which is Canon Rebel and Canon DSLR, somebody, when they type these 3 keywords, your ad might show up, but when they look at this, the initial impression is this is not about Canon at all, so the consumer will simply move away from your ad, right? Again, like what Google is also doing, because here your impression is 0, which means that this ad actually did not show up, right? So the ad did not show up because Google itself decided that this ad is not relevant to the keywords that you are using. Your keywords and the advertisement itself is very, very different, right? This is more about action cameras and sports, whereas your keywords are very, very specific to Canon Rebel and Canon DSLR, which I would say are not sports cameras, right? And again, another thing which I have mentioned in the previous example and has been mentioned in class many, many times, even before the simulation started, after round 1, and from students who posted their thoughts in the discussion forum and the students talking in class, one of the big thing that we need to keep in mind is we need to have more keywords. We need, like, 3 keyword is not nearly enough. This is not enough at all, right? So try to do a little bit more keyword research. Look at all the keywords that you think is relevant to the product that you are selling. So if you are selling Canon Rebel cameras, and in the simulation there are specific product that you are selling, you are not selling a broad-based product, you are selling a specific product. So find out information or find out keywords that you think are specific to that particular keyword or that particular product, and then search for keywords that is associated with that product, and search for many keywords. As I said, both long tail and short, both long tails and fat head keywords, right? So I would say, because you only selected these 3 keywords, only when somebody types in these keywords your ad becomes relevant, and then Google will think about displaying your ad, right? Now again, only these three keywords. If somebody typed in anything else, your ad is not relevant at all and their ad will not show up at all. Now if somebody typed in these three keywords, Google is going to look at your quality of your ad, right? And when it looks at the quality of your ad, Google thinks that your quality is not that good. So when somebody is looking at this ad does not seem particularly relevant to the keywords that you have selected, right? So here you have put in a little bit of a description, which some other students have not done. So this description kind of makes it more this description is a really good way of being creative and then increasing the quality of your ad. But I would say, like, because your ad is going to show up for these keywords, include the keywords more in your ads. So that's another thing associated with this particular ad. Let's look at the other keywords or other ads. So we can see, like, campaign. Within the campaign there were two campaigns. One was paused. We looked at good for any sports. Let's take a look at high action shots right now, and there is one ad for this, right? Again, there is a good description here, but the camera is the best camera money can buy for the shots you need. So I'm not sure what product is being sold here except for the Nikon that is written here. Now since you are not selling Nikon brand, you are selling Nikon specific product, right? So since you are going to spend money advertising a specific product and you're trying to sell a specific product, use those keywords related to that particular product in your ads. And I've seen that you've used it only once, right? So here you do have like a unique value proposition of best camera that money can buy. But there is no call to action, right? That I can see in this ad, which is again something that you need to keep in mind. Now let's look at the keywords that are used, and as I said, again, 3 keywords not nearly enough. You have to select more keywords, both fathead and long tail keywords. Use as many keywords as you think is necessary. Don't go more than 20, but select as many keywords as you think is necessary, because again, the same pitfall, right? You only will show up for 3 cameras. You only will show up for 3 keywords, and for those keywords your ad may not necessarily be that relevant for a consumer, even if you were able to generate impressions. So let's take a look at this student, and here we can see the requirement. Like, we have 2 campaigns. The student has 2 campaigns that are running, which again, as I said, if you have 6 ads running versus if you only have 2 ads running, there is going to be a big difference in terms of the revenue that you are generating, because you are selling 6 products versus you are only selling 2 products, right? So let's take a look at here. There is like a good breakdown of the budget for each of those campaigns, and the total is not 5,000, but I would assume that the $50 has gone for the email campaign. So let's take a look at the campaigns. So here we see that all the campaigns are active. For the first campaign, Nikon, Samsung and Sony cameras are being sold. For the second campaign, Canon Rebel T7, GoPro and Panasonic Lumix are being sold. So till now the student has 2 campaigns and then 3 ad groups for each of those campaigns, which is following the requirements perfectly. Now we see that there are 3 advertisements for the practice campaign. As we said, there are 2 campaigns. Practice campaign has 3 ad groups running, and within those 3 ad groups are these 3 ads. So if I just click on Canon Rebel T6i, then I see that this is one ad group that is running for the product, that is Canon Rebel T7i, that's being sold. So Canon Rebel T7i camera, digital camera, camera castle for Canon Rebels, right? So let's take a look at the keywords that is associated with this particular product. So here we can see that there is 1 2 3 4 5, so there are 6 keywords that has been bought for this particular advertisement. Now, as I would say, like 6 keywords, not exactly enough. Try to buy more keywords, right? Try to buy both long tail and fathead keywords. Now this is very like Canon Rebel T7i, Canon T7i, T7i, Canon cameras, Canon. All of those keywords are very relevant to the ad groups. You can see here Canon Rebel T7i, again camera Canon Rebel, right? So one of the things that I would say here is include your unique value propositions and call to action, right? So that would be something that could make this particular advertisement better, but a good job in terms of associating the keywords with the advertisement itself. So here, let's see, impression, we say Canon, the impression is 0. Could be because Canon is a very competitive keyword, right? Again, Canon DSLR, the keyword impression is still 0. So for Canon camera, for Canon Rebel T7i, we can see that for these, which the ad is also relevant towards, we see that this particular example is generating impressions, right? This is generating impressions, and we are also getting clicks. So average cost, total cost, click-through rate 3 versus 4.5, right? 2.83. so these are all click-through rate because the impression is 0, all of this is 0, and we see that actually some of the, so conversion is 19, so actually 19 products were sold, out of which we generate a $1,500 profit, right? So good job in terms of creating keywords that are associated with the advertisement itself. Now let's take a look at a different ad group, which is GoPro camera. So again, for GoPro, this is, I would say, a good enough number for keywords, because if you are, so in the round 1 you selected 5 or 6 keywords, it didn't work, then you should be increasing the number of keywords in the second round, right? And you should be creating different types of keywords associated with the product that you are actually selling in the second round. If that does not happen, then we have 10 rounds to go, so you have more time and more option to actually make the changes that you think will help you in getting more impressions and more clicks. So here we see, I think, around 10 keywords, right? And then the impressions, there are still some keywords, at least 4 of those keywords have not generated any impressions, right? But there are keywords like best GoPro is a keyword that has generated certain number of impressions. Now even though this generated 191 impression, it only resulted in 2 clicks, right? So click-through rate of 1, click-through rate of 1.3, click-through rate of 7, 5. So this would mean that even though the advertisement is relevant and did show up, so the ad and the keywords are associated enough that the ad actually did show up, the consumers did not think that there was a strong enough correlation to, so because the ad is about GoPro Hero 7 and the keywords is about best GoPro. So as we said, like consumer decision making process, somebody who's typing the best GoPro may not be in the purchase stage yet, right? So they're not going to be the ones that are going to buy the product. They will be reading articles or thinking about finding information about best GoPro camera. So they may not be the ones that are actually going to convert and then buy your product. So here the advertisement is about Hero 7, but again, one problem I would see here is that the keywords that have been bought is not about the GoPro Hero 7, right? Because the ad is about GoPro Hero 7, and somebody clicking on this ad would, like, so who would be clicking us? So this ad is about GoPro Hero 7, but the keywords that have been bought is not about GoPro Hero 7 completely, right? So this particular advertisement is only going to show up when somebody is typing these keywords. Now when somebody is typing these keywords and this ad shows up, how likely do you think those consumers are going to be to click on this ad? So somebody is typing best GoPro and your ad shows up, I would say that it's unlikely that they will actually be interested in this particular ad, right? So if somebody is typing in used GoPro and your ad will show up, then it may not be that relevant to the consumers, which means that there will not be any conversion even if your ad actually did show up, right? So if we had bought some keywords associated with GoPro Hero 7 itself, then, and if we are able to get impressions on that keyword, then maybe we'll get more clicks and then we would get conversion as well, because in that case the keywords and ad would be more related to each other. And I would say, like, one of the reason why we see a bunch of zeros here is because the keywords and the ads are not that related with each other, which was not the case with Canon Rebel T7i. As we said, for this particular example, the keywords and the ads were very related, right? And that is why we were able to generate sales or revenues. We were able to get impression, we were able to get click-through, and we were also able to get conversion. Now let's take a look at the Panasonic Lumix. So here Panasonic Lumix, there is a specific example as well. Shop Ken's Camera Castle, great quality and experience. As I said, this description is a place in which you can be creative, right? And then maybe create stories that create stories that consumers might that might grab the consumer's attention and make them pay attention to the advertisement that you have, right? So let's take a look at the keywords. Again, I would say not enough keywords here that have been bought, right? But whatever keywords you have bought, so one particular keyword is the only one that is actually performing. The other keywords are not performing, right? Which is a risky strategy. So do buy more keywords. 4 keywords I would say is not enough, right? But here we can see the keyword is more related to the product. Now, not the specific product, but the keyword is more related to the product than I would say was the case with the GoPro Hero 7, right? So here Panasonic Lumix, again Stukent Panasonic Lumix, right? So keywords also associated with Panasonic. So here Panasonic camera, I would say like very high competition for this, also very high competition for this, but for Panasonic camera your ads is generating impressions, right? And it's also generating a significant amount of clicks. A click-through rate of 3% is quite good. You generated 1600 impressions and 52 clicked on that. The conversion is only 2 out of 52, which is not bad, but it is not as good as I would say was the case with Canon Rebel T7i, where the conversion rate was 5.84%, because the keywords that you used, right? So Canon Rebel T7i has a higher conversion rate because Canon Rebel T7i is more relevant to the consumers than this Canon camera. So the conversion is low, but still it's kind of okay. So I hope this helps you understand some of the thing that is going on in this particular simulation. If there is any questions, any concerns, please don't hesitate to ask me or send me an email, and then we can go over this again. And as I said, one of the reasons some students are doing really well might be because they have 6 ads running. All of them are good compared to some other students who only have 1 ad running, and there are problems with the advertisements that they have created, right? So here we can see there are 6 advertisements running and all of them are generating impressions, although it's not necessary that all the ads are generating impressions, right? So here we can see all the ads, we can see how many keywords this particular student has bought for all of the different ads, but we also know that not all of those are generating impressions, right? Almost half of those have not generated any impressions, but there's the other half that have generated impressions for the students and have generated some conversion for the student as well. So hopefully this helps you understand some of the things that is going on in this simulation. And as I said, this is a simulation, so the results might be different between students, right? Because it's a simulation game. Unless there is a systematic problem with the simulation, which has happened in the past, the simulation runs really, really well. So if you have any questions and concerns, don't hesitate to let me know. Thank you very much. Have a really, really wonderful spring break. Take care.